I'll wake up. I'll take a big old.
Yeah. You good? I gotta have some.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon and welcome to the regularly scheduled City Commission meeting for Tuesday, November the 14th. If you don't mind, if you're able, please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Can we have a call for attendance, please?
Commissioner Witt?
Here.
Commissioner Vowles?
Here.
Commissioner Thomas?
Here.
Commissioner Pruitt?
Here.
Mayor Staten?
Here. First up on the agenda, if I could ask for Miss Jimmy Deal to come up to the podium. We have a proclamation that Marie is going to read.
National American Indian Heritage Month. Whereas for longer than any other people, Native Americans have lived upon the land where our nation and city now stand. And whereas Native Americans contributions and values have shaped the social, political, environmental, and economic fabric of our state, while also enhancing freedom, prosperity, and cultural diversity. And whereas their customs and traditions are respected and celebrated as part of a rich legacy throughout the United States. And whereas Native American Awareness Week began in 1976, and recognition was expanded by Congress and approved by President George Bush in August 1990, designating the month of November as National American Indian Heritage Month. Now therefore, Brad Staten, by virtue of the authority vested in him as mayor of the city of Henderson, does hereby proclaim the month of November 2023 as National American Indian Heritage Month in the city of Henderson, honoring the unique heritage of this continent's first people and reaffirming the commitment to respect each tribe's sovereignty and cultural identity.
Well, I'm a member of the local DAR, and we do honor our Native heritage every month in our meetings, and we certainly do appreciate this proclamation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Buzzy, next up we have recognition of some new employees.
Yes, Sam, would you like to bring them up, if you don't care, and introduce everybody? Bring the supervisor with you. Maybe introduce Wade first, and then he can introduce them.
Okay, this is Wade Powell. He's a crew leader from HWU. Wade.
Johnny Kerrigan. Who else we got? Philip Pierce. Same. Hired at the same time. Two gentlemen do not work for me. Say your name.
I'm Brian Walters. I work with the maintenance department with Henderson Water Utility.
We just got here. Sorry.
Wait a
This is
minute,
Nick.
wait a minute, we have one more
Oh.
gentleman.
Get back here.
Nate Riley. Northwest.
Well, we have almost a whole new basketball team with the water utility.
Are they new employees also?
Yeah,
This gentleman is not.
I'm with the gas department.
All right.
This is Nick Thatcher with the Henderson Municipal Gas. He started off as a new servicer, came with lots of experience from Miller Pipeline. Oh! Nick Lindsay, I'm sorry. There's another Nick that started at the same line.
Close enough.
Sorry about that.
Nick Lindsay.
Lindsay.
Yes.
Sorry.
Well, we thank you all for coming to the City Commission meeting today, and just wanted to let you all know how much we value you as employees here at the city. You know, we work really hard and really closely with all of our departments to try to make sure that you get competitive pay and a good working environment and some really good benefits on top of that. And so thank you so much for coming to work for the city of Henderson. We're awfully proud of you, and welcome to the team. All right, next up, we have a presentation on community addiction awareness by the coordinator, Angie Gatton.
Afternoon, everyone. I gave you all some statistics, and these are from the computer-aided dispatch, the CAD system that our local dispatchers use. All the emergency first responders, the calls go in through that system. So that's where I collected the data from. There have been 54 overdoses, and 14 of those overdoses have resulted in death, January 2023 through September 2023. Males have been affected more than females. 60% of the ODs were male. As far as race and ethnicity, there were 11 that they did not have a race or ethnicity logged into the CAD system. But of the ones that were listed, 35 of the 54 overdoses were white and 8 were African American. If you look on the back, most people, whenever I have been out and about, most people think that it's a certain area of Henderson that is more greatly affected than another. And the way I did the sector data is I did the sectors like the Henderson City Police. They have a north sector, south, east, west, and then there's county. So in the north sector, there were 16 overdoses and 2 deaths. In Henderson City South, there were 8 overdoses and 3 deaths. Henderson City East, there were 10 overdoses and 2 deaths. Henderson City West, there were 12 overdoses and 5 deaths. And in Henderson County, there were 8 overdoses and 2 deaths. So as you can see, there was no part of our city or county that was not affected by overdoses and overdose deaths. One of my big concerns are the students that are going to be returning from college. Some of them may have been exposed to or experienced new things, and I want people to come out to the different presentations that I do so that they can know what to look for and what to be aware. Sometimes the change in behavior is mental illness, has some depression or anxiety, but some of it has to do with addiction and has to do with their exposure to those types of substances. I'm also concerned about the holidays in this time of year. This time of year, we usually see an uptick in overdoses and overdose-related deaths. A lot of it is financial. It's also stress because there are strained family relationships. The holidays bring that kind of stuff to the forefront. There are a lot of family intensive holidays that sometimes people find extremely stressing. And so I just want people to know what to look for and know where to reach out. On the presentation, on the statistics I gave you a picture of a penny, and that little white substance, that's the amount of fentanyl it takes to kill you. And that a lot of people are very shocked to know that it takes just that tiny bit to kill you. Also, people don't realize that fentanyl was once solely only prepared for injection, but now it can be taken orally. It can be taken by pill, tablet, film, blotter paper, smoked, snorted, sniffed, and in a transdermal patch. This means that it can be put into any substance. The fentanyl-related overdoses, the vast majority of those were unintentional fentanyl exposure. That was not their substance of choice, but it was a substance that was added in. I do have a presentation today at Audubon Kids Zone starting at 6 p.m. It's open to the public. I will be doing the stop presentation, just getting that information out to people. It's open to the public. Anybody is welcome to attend, and I'm hoping to get more places like Audubon Kids Zone that can house a group of people, and we can get this information to people's hands. Do you guys have any questions, or is there anything that I can clarify or answer?
The data, and I'm sorry that but the data on the sector data?
Yes.
Is that year to date or?
Yes.
Okay. I thought they looked like year to date numbers. I just wanted to make sure that that's okay.
One statistic I did want to point out, in the age from 26 to 45, if you notice, that 32 of the 54 overdoses were in the 26 to 45-year-old range, and 9 of the 14 deaths were in that range. This is why this information is so important to get out to everyone, because everybody knows somebody that's addicted and or in recovery. And recovery is everybody's responsibility. We have got to support those people that are in recovery to help them stay on that path, because addiction is a disease. And just because they have gone through a recovery process does not mean they're going to stay recovered. Just like people who have cancer and have gone through chemo does not mean that cancer is not going to come back. So we have to really think about it as a disease, and that we have to attack it like a disease.
Been outreach.
Yes, we currently the Center for Addiction Recovery, the WARM, they are doing classes in the for the 9th grade. They're doing one class every 9 weeks so that they can target all of the incoming freshmen. And there's some other different programs that they are doing as well. And I know the Port is active in trying to get more information out to that age population.
Angie, you made this presentation last week, the homeless program, and you encouraging us at the homeless solution have Narcan part of our first aid, our homes as well as in our vehicles. Touch on why that's people get Narcan.
You can get Narcan at the Recovery Resource Club, which is the Zion United Church of Christ, the church that's behind Hardee's. That is the Recovery Club. You can get it at WARM. You can contact us, and we can make sure that it gets in your hands. It's going to be available at all of my presentations that I do for STOP. And the reason why it's important is because you never know when you may experience somebody who's having an opioid event. They may have unintentionally been exposed to fentanyl or an opioid. They may have unintentionally had a prescription medication and unintentionally overdosed themselves. If you are out in public, then you're probably going to experience at some point somebody that's experiencing an opioid event. I keep it in my car. I keep it in my house. I keep it in my purse if I go in to any business, because I do not want to watch somebody die from an overdose and I had some medication that could help temporarily reverse that. It's not harmful if you're not having an opioid event. Narcan is not going to have any effect on you. When my daughter went back to college, I sent her with quite a bit and said, I want it on every floor of your sorority house. I want it all those places that you go, because I do not want you to experience an overdose and not have the tools that you need to help that.
Mayor, in Angie, when we first had our opioid funds, Commissioner Bowles and you are on the Smith County Co-op, and one of the things that we talked about was what we can do with this opioid funds. I remember you saying if we can save one person's life with hiring Angie or bringing this program, then it'll be worth it. Angie, can you share with them what happened in Pittsburgh Tank Tower and what happened? And I just want you all to hear this, because I think that you all made a great decision, and she's going to explain to you how this program saved one person's life that we know.
So I did 3 separate presentations at Pittsburgh Tank and Tower. I did one for their all-state location, and then I did 2 at their Pittsburgh Tank and Tower location. The first location, then I did a presentation. It was at Allstate, And whenever I finish the presentation, because the presentation isn't just, it's the whole facet of, this is what an opioid is, this is what fentanyl is, this is what addiction looks like, this is what an overdose looks like. These are harm reduction resources. So it does a full circle type of presentation. And whenever I left, one of the coworkers went up to management and said, hey, I knew something was going on with a coworker, but I think that this person is having an addiction problem. Can you help me talk to this person? So they went to go and speak to the person. He was on lunch. They were waiting for him to arrive back from lunch. He was late. They looked out in the parking lot, saw his vehicles in the parking lot, and he had overdosed in the parking lot. It is those kind of things that we need to, that all businesses, I am open to go into any business, and because that is where our citizens are. Our citizens are in these businesses working. That's where I need to be. And businesses need to understand that their workforce, they are probably experiencing people that are addicted, or their workers are experiencing people that they are close to that are addicted or in recovery. So this just needs to be, this information needs to be everywhere. And I know that, fentanyl was, the hot topic there at the beginning of the year, and then other things have happened, but this has to stay in the forefront because, I know that marijuana uses has increased with the younger population, and they don't realize that fentanyl can be smoked. So if they are ingesting the fentanyl and they're blowing this smoke out, it's everybody. They need to, drug dealers are in the money-making business, and the more people they can get hooked, the more money they make. And the risk of somebody dying is worth it to them. And so we just need to have that mindset, and so that we can try to get a hold of and get ahead of the addiction problem.
Got a question. Is
Yes.
fentanyl transferable through currency?
Yes.
That's what I heard.
It's a transdermal patch. You can put it on a transdermal patch. It is absorbed through the skin. So it can be in all different forms.
That's what I heard.
Well, thank you for everything that you're doing for the community. I don't think that there's a person in here or watching at home that hasn't had some exposure to somebody in their family or friend circle who's had an issue with drug addiction. And so the work that you're doing is very important.
Thank you.
And I just want to say that I appreciate it. I appreciate you coming to the commission and letting us know and keeping us informed. And as you work through your job, if there are other resources that we have not given you that you need, you come back and ask.
Okay. I appreciate that. Thank
Yes,
you so
ma'am.
much. Thank
Yes,
you for your time.
Thank you. Before we move on to the agenda, is there anyone in the room who is here to speak on an issue that is not on the agenda? Hearing none, we have a consent agenda.
The consent agenda consists of the minutes of October 17th, 2023 called meeting, October 17th, 2023 called work session, October 24th, 2023 regular meeting, and October 24th, 2023 called work session. Municipal Order 52-23, municipal order approving the memorandum of understanding between the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Personnel and Readiness of the U.S. Department of Defense and the City of Henderson Police Department. Resolution number 52-23, resolution granting property reassessment moratorium for Caudette properties for property located at 115 and 115 and a half North Main Street, Henderson, Kentucky. And Resolution 53-23, resolution authorizing mayor to execute consent for the closure of unimproved right-of-way located at the back of 540 2nd Street between North Adams Street towards North Ingram Street.
Before we get a motion, are there any items that any commissioner would like to pull for further and individual discussion? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
We have a motion, do we have a second? Second, Commissioner Vowles. Any questions, comments, suggestions? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Witt?
Aye.
Commissioner Vowles?
Aye.
Commissioner Thomas.
Aye.
Commissioner Pruitt.
Aye.
Mayor Staten.
Aye. Next up, we have a second reading for an ordinance amending the Pratt Industrial Building Revenue Bonds.
Okay. Hey, sorry.
Oh, this is
I'm
a
gonna
bonding
cheat.
one, too. Oh,
Yeah.
Please cheat. It's gonna be long.
Sorry, an ordinance of the Board of Commissioners of the City of Henderson, Kentucky, authorizing A, the issuance of its industrial revenue bonds, Pratt Henderson Corrugating LLC project, taxable series 2023, in a maximum aggregate principal amount of $160 million in one or more series for the benefit of Pratt Henderson Corrugating LLC, and B, the execution and delivery of a bond purchase agreement, lease agreement, and payment in lieu of taxes agreement for each such series and other related documents. Number 1, the amending ordinance amends and supplements an ordinance of the city previously adopted on December 22nd, 2022, the prior ordinance entitled, An Ordinance of the Board of Commissioners of the City of Henderson, Kentucky, authorizing the issuance of $160 million maximum aggregate principal amount of its industrial revenue bonds, Pratt Henderson Corrugating LLC project, taxable Series 2023A, authorizing the proceeds of the Series 2023A bonds to be made available to Pratt Henderson Corrugating LLC, a Delaware limited liability company, for the purpose of financing the acquisition, construction, installation, and equipping of an industrial building, approving the sale of the Series 2023A bonds to Pratt Corrugating Holdings Incorporated as the purchaser thereof, approving and authorizing the execution and delivery of a lease agreement, a trust indenture, a bond purchase agreement, a pilot agreement, and other related documents, and authorizing further action by city officials and directing them to take all necessary action to effectuate the intent and purpose of this ordinance. Number 2, the prior ordinance authorizes the issuance of the city its industrial building revenue bonds, Pratt Henderson Corrugating LLC project, taxable Series 2023A, in a maximum aggregate principal amount of $160 million, the bonds, to finance the cost of the acquisition, construction, installation, and equipping of an industrial building comprised of real property improvements, fixtures, and personal property constituting a corrugated box manufacturing facility, facilities functionally related and subordinate thereto, and other ancillary improvements and equipment, together with storage, warehousing, and distribution facilities in respect thereof, located at 6305 Kentucky 425, within the jurisdictional boundaries of the city, the project. Number 3, the amending ordinance authorizes 1, the issuance of the bonds in one or more series, but still subject to the maximum principal amount of $160 million, and 2, the execution and delivery of a separate bond purchase agreement, lease agreement, and pilot agreement for each such series and other related documents related to certain of the equipment comprising part of the project. The amending ordinance also clarifies that any series of the bonds may be purchased by Pratt Corrugated Holdings Incorporated. Number 4, the prior ordinance provides that pursuant to sections 103.200 through 103.285, inclusive of the Kentucky Revised Statutes, the bonds will constitute special and limited obligations of the city payable solely from receipts and security derived from the company.
Is that it?
That's it.
Do we have a motion to approve? Do we have a second? Second. We have a motion and a second. Are there any questions, comments, or suggestions? This specific item has been discussed at length in previous meetings. Hearing none, we'll have a roll call, please.
Commissioner Witt?
Aye.
Commissioner Bowles?
Aye.
Commissioner Thomas?
Aye.
Commissioner Pruitt?
Aye.
Mayor Staten.
Aye. Next up, we have a first reading of an ordinance closing public right-of-way.
Ordinance number 31-23, ordinance closing public right-of-way, 540 Second Street. An ordinance closing a portion of public right-of-way, which is approximately 3,788 total square feet of unimproved alleyway located at the back of 540 2nd Street in the city of Henderson and running between North Adams Street towards North Ingram Street, minus a 100-foot section that is to remain open coming from North Ingram Street.
Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Do we have any comments, questions, suggestions?
Mayor,
Yes,
just
sir.
as clarification, the city requested this right-of-way closing in order to move forward with our fire station project. And as you're aware, we have several parcels of property that are on either side of this alleyway that's being requested to be closed. And so we're doing this in order to consolidate our properties.
Gotcha. Any other questions? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Witt?
Aye.
Commissioner Bowles?
Aye.
Commissioner Thomas?
Aye.
Commissioner Pruitt?
Aye.
Mayor State?
Aye. We have, next up, we have an ordinance creating a curfew for the parks.
Ordinance number 32-23, ordinance amending Chapter 17 Parks and Recreation relating to closing times. An ordinance amending Chapter 17 Parks and Recreation, Article 1 in general, establishing closing times for certain city parks by adding Section 17-7, closing times for Reverend Anthony Brooks Park, Community Park, East End Park, Kimmel Park, and playgrounds in all city parks except during special events of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Henderson.
Before we get to the discussion, can we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Is there anyone here who would like to speak on this particular ordinance? Do we have any comments, questions, or suggestions from the commission? All right, roll call, please.
Commissioner Witt?
Aye.
Commissioner Bowles?
Aye.
Commissioner Thomas?
Aye.
Commissioner Pruitt?
Aye.
Mayor State?
Aye. Next up, we have an ordinance amending the appendix for zoning-related issues.
Ordinance number 33-23, ordinance amending Appendix A zoning relating to towing services and towing and recovery yards. An ordinance amending Article 2 definitions, Section 2.01 definitions, and amending Article 24 M2 heavy industrial district, Section 24.06 conditional uses of Appendix A zoning of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Henderson relating to towing services and towing and recovery yards.
Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Before we get to a vote, Dawn, would you mind, I had a question earlier for her that a citizen asked, but I wanted to ask you here. Can you explain how this might impact any existing tow companies?
Any existing tow company, once this becomes a full public ordinance, will still be allowed to operate where they are located under non-conforming. So they will be, in essence, grandfathered in for the duration of the operation.
Gotcha. So no matter how recent it was, they'll be considered grandfathered in, and this will apply to any further applications to start a tow yard in Henderson
So
after this passes, correct?
yes, sir.
All right. Any other questions or comments or suggestions? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Witt?
Aye.
Commissioner Bowles?
Aye.
Commissioner Thomas?
Aye.
Commissioner Pruitt?
Aye.
Mayor Staten?
Aye. Next up, we have an ordinance amending Appendix A zoning.
Ordinance number 34-23, ordinance amending Appendix A zoning by adding Article 36, renewable energy systems. Ordinance amending Appendix A zoning of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Henderson, creating Article 36, renewable energy systems, amending Section 4.22, solar energy systems by relocating the entire section to Article 36 and creating Section 36.01, solar energy systems, creating Section 36.02, battery energy storage systems, and amending Article 24 M2 heavy industrial district, Section 24.06, conditional uses.
Before we get a motion, this particular topic was discussed at a recent planning commission meeting, It was also the topic of an article in the Hendersonian. And I think we have a couple of people here who would like to address the commission about this before we have a motion or a vote or anything. So first up, I'd like to invite Brad Bickett, CEO of HMP&L, to come up and offer his comments.
Thank you, Mayor, City Commission. I want to first commend the folks with the city attorney, Don Kelsey, Buzzy Newman, city manager, along with the fire department, the fire marshal, the fire chief, for all the work that they've done in a very short period of time to come up with an ordinance, recognizing that these types of systems do need regulation. Henderson Municipal Power and Light does support an ordinance for battery energy storage systems. We also support the regulations that are included in the draft, or in the ordinance that's before you. I've had many discussions, not with just with folks here locally, but other consultants, and actually have talked to a couple other managers of utilities across the country. This is a challenging topic that not just we are dealing with, but other cities are also dealing with it. Some of them are choosing to regulate these systems, some are not. Again, I think it's the right move to do it. But I want to share with you, which hasn't been done yet that I'm aware of, what the benefits could be for battery energy storage systems for Henderson, for the citizens of Henderson. There's been a lot of focus on the risk, and I'm prepared to talk about the risk or take questions as they pertain to the type of system which we have an active RFP out for. We will receive final bids Friday, but we already have indicative pricing from nationally recognized developers. We've got a lot of interest. We've got 9 what we call indicative proposals that we've been able to consider and help us specify the details of this project. And it's really been encouraging. Because the price for lithium carbonate has declined very rapidly just recently. And with the federal incentives, we've seen battery storage systems, particularly lithium iron phosphate, which is the chemistry that we're seeking. It's becoming a very economic option for us. And so I know one of the goals, Mayor, of yours is to have resiliency, have some local, reliability and resiliency of our electric system. You all, I think, are aware that some of these older fossil fuel plants, as they become antiquated, are retiring. What you're seeing come online is primarily wind and solar. A lot of wind out west of us, soon to be here. It's coming. And what you really have to have in order to keep that resiliency of the grid is something to bridge those times when the wind's not blowing and the sun's not shining. So we've done the cost-benefit analysis. It works, and I'm prepared to share with you a little bit about that. What the decision makers in town, you all, planning and zoning, other folks need to do is weigh the risk-benefit analysis, right? And so what I don't want to do is get too much focused on the risk, and these have been, the incidents that have been in the news have certainly been under a magnifying glass. I will tell you, and a lot of the incidents that you'll find when you search the database, which doesn't actually exist for conventional electric infrastructure, but it exists for battery energy storage systems. About half of those are outside the United States. A lot of them are in South Korea. Certainly not to the same standards that we would follow in the United States. To give you an idea of what we're looking at, first step, a lot of people I don't think realize that we're actually looking at multiple phases. We're not just looking at this first project. The RFP that's out is for a battery storage system that would be sited at our sub-7 on South Green. It would be a 12 megawatt system capable of discharging that amount over 4 hours. That's going to meet the needs of about 12% of our power requirements on an annual basis. And based on what we know today, forward pricing, costs that we're seeing, it's going to represent about a $1 million savings, power costs every year. From where, right now, it costs us about $27 million to purchase and deliver power to our customers. based on our current new contracts, which is really good. Also, we've managed to lock in some good power contracts for the next 3 years. This project could come online by the end of that third year to keep our power costs stable. So you're talking about a little over 3% of cost savings with this project if it can go forward. With that, if we can replicate that 8 more times, in theory, we could meet the total needs of the city of Henderson, and you can recognize the savings compared to, and what I'm referring to is a comparison between like a peaker plant that would run off of fossil fuel natural gas. It would be a total of $8 million, which is a significant cost savings compared to what our other most logical option would be at our scale, which is, like I said, a simple cycle type natural gas fuel power plant. So we've done the cost benefit analysis. Like I said, it's a very, I say change is disruptive, right? So I remember back in 2018, our board chair asked about solar, and we said it was not yet economic, and it wasn't. No sooner than we were asked or did the study and evaluated retiring the power plant, we started receiving offers for solar projects that were half of what we had seen before. It changed that quickly. And you're seeing the same thing happen now. And you might ask, why aren't other folks in Kentucky looking to this? We're in a unique position for a couple of reasons. Number one, we're in an organized market. We can buy and sell power on an hourly basis if we need it or we don't need it. So what that allows us to do, when all this wind and solar comes and more is being produced than we need, we'll be able to charge these batteries at very low cost. And then we can discharge it in the evening when the sun goes down if the wind's not blowing. So there's quite a bit of value there. And so and that's one thing that Hempel has, I say, in favor. The other is that we happen to not be covered by existing resources and we have contracts, but we're actually allowed to make this change. Whereas a lot of companies, a lot of utilities are in their older model and they're still trying to figure out what to do. And it's a very difficult decision in a political environment that changes so quickly when you're trying to plan for the next 20 or 30 years. So we're not alone. I think that if you look outside of the state, there's many other similar type public power utilities looking at battery storage. You'll also hear a lot about hydrogen, which is another form of storage. You take the power produced from solar or wind when you don't need it, and you use electrolysis to make hydrogen. You crack the water into hydrogen and oxygen. There's a lot of pilot projects being done with that, but it's not really demonstrated technology. So it's not mature enough for us yet or cost effective. But it could be something we look at. I think that's really the points I wanted to make, and I just have a flyer that I'd like to hand out for folks to it kind of summarizes what I just said. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Brad, thank you for presenting some information to us, and while you're up there, do we have any questions for Mr. Biggett?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Brian, how sure are you at this point that this would be a safe product close to any residence?
Trying to think about how to put that in a percentage of surety or what, but we believe, we're confident right now that we can make this system as safe as the existing electric infrastructure. When I'm referring to mainly as the transformers at the substations, which can have failures, just like a battery system can, and there's a significant amount of energy going through that transformer at any given time. What we have on those systems are protection. We have protection system equipment that we have to monitor and maintain, just like we would a battery storage system. And the standards, the industry standards are changing very quickly as they've learned from incidents when things happen. With the term you'll hear a lot about is thermal runaway. It's whenever one of these cells overheats and it propagates. And again, the technology we're pursuing It's actually the better technology anyway for these types of systems, because if you're using lithium batteries for power tools or some application where you need a fast discharge, that's really not what we're after. So the lithium iron phosphate chemistry is more stable. It's not as susceptible to that type of an event. And we also are learning more all the time about the layered security measures, safety measures you can put in place, the type of fire suppression that works best. One of the key intents is to make sure the modules are separated so that if you have a reaction, that it will extinguish itself without spreading to other modules. Because these battery systems are modular, so there are many batteries hooked together.
Are you aware that there are some states that are banning it? They're putting a ban on storage.
Yeah, so I've seen about
I was just wondering why.
recommended moratorium. I'm not sure if there's actually one that's been put into place. There may be. I know
I was
there's.
just wondering, do you know why they were putting that, just slowing it down?
I don't know specifically why, because I've not researched those specific cases. I know I understood from folks that we've talked to that one place is New York. I think the state. It's not the state, but it's some of the local jurisdictions have considered a moratorium, but I'm not sure if one's actually been put into place or not. I read that they were considering it, or recommending it.
Any other questions for Brad? Thank you, sir, for the information.
You're welcome.
And I know that our fire department is here, and so I think there was somebody from the fire department that might want to come up and speak to us as well.
First, thanks for letting us come up here and speak. I wanted to share with you all that some statistics that we found. So as of the 2023, 11 of the battery energy storage systems reported to the database they've had an incident of a fire. And this is this year. 5 listed as substations, and then 1 was listed urban, which was a storage system in a basement of a commercial building that caught fire, and the others are listed rural or farm. And 5 listed of those 11 are LFP chemistry, which is the lithium iron phosphate, is a 1/4 mile, and then shelter in place is a 1/2 mile up to 1 mile. It would require air monitoring and testing throughout the incident due to the possible toxic smoke. It would require us as the fire department to be there around the clock, and that's not just our resources, but we also have to think about HPD's resources and blocking the highway if something happened, EMA, Public Works. I mean, and if we send all our resources to this one incident for that amount of days, it leaves the rest of our city unprotected. So we have to look at those. And you are correct, Mr. Pruitt, there are moratoriums that have been implemented in multiple states, New York, Washington, Tennessee, Florida, Minnesota, and one to take into consideration is just our neighboring state, Indiana.
3 weeks ago.
3 weeks ago in Marshall County, Indiana, the same company that is making a proposal to our county, which is Tenaska, was shot down with a moratorium on August, I think it's October 17th, I believe. So, as the fire chief, my number one priority is the safety for our community and our community members. I do support the ordinance that's in place, but the second priority is I have to also, what gives us the most success to be able to mitigate that emergency? And I have to take those two things in consideration. If it's up to you all whether you pass it or you don't pass it, but if you don't, I would say my recommendation would be to put a moratorium on it and let with the technology being so advanced, let the codes, the standards, let them catch up so we can step back and take a break and then in 12 months look at it again. Do you have anything to add, Matt?
No, sir.
Any questions for our fire chief? Thank you all so much. Is there anyone else in the room who would like to speak on this particular issue? Hearing none, just for discussion purposes, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
I'll second for entertainment.
Thank you. Thank you. So we have a motion and a second. And so I wanted to make a few comments. And so both of you present really good points. Brad, I appreciate you bringing up our desire to have more resiliency. And whenever he talks about resiliency, what you're referring to is our ability to produce power in our community to offset the power that we take in, basically, in a nutshell. And so I know that HMPNL has been exploring a lot of different things, and I appreciate the fact that you all are doing that. The fire chief came up and offered your viewpoints, and those should definitely, so you have safety versus resiliency versus this particular ordinance. I think it would be useful at this particular point in time, if Dawn, I want to put you on the spot.
Okay.
Do you mind to just rehash briefly what the history of this particular ordinance is and how it wound back up on our agenda? And just a brief overview of the safety protections that would be in place if we do pass this particular ordinance.
Okay, I pull up my planning, I'm presenting, I won't do the whole thing.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
It's an important one. We need to get this
Okay.
right.
This is actually the presentation I make in the planning board. Oh, let's see. There we go. Okay, so real briefly, it came to our attention that there were some battery energy storage systems that were considering both Henderson County and the city of Henderson as a location area. We then had a short period of time to do the research and get an ordinance in place. A lot of communities are having these come in and they're putting moratoriums on because of safety issues, and they just don't have enough information to get a ordinance in place. We were very fortunate that Matt and Josh had some background in this, and we were able to, and we really hit an all hands on deck. We couldn't have done this without Brian Bishop from the Planning Commission and Jennifer Marks. The county is working on this at the same time. So it was an all hands on deck. As you all know, any zoning ordinance has to go first to the Planning Commission for statute. So we brought it to you all. We had actually just finished it that morning when we brought it to you all for a review. And if you all remember, it's really a two-tier system. Any batteries at your home, your cars, they're going to be exempt. Tier 1 batteries are exempting they're allowed in any zone except for 2. But Tier 2 is really what we're talking about. As Mr. Bickett explained, these are really modular, and so this is what you're talking about. This picture is really kind of what you're talking about. We actually spoke to a city in New York that unfortunately had a thermal meltdown at one of these facilities, and they had 2 thermal meltdowns at the same facility within a 48-hour period. And unfortunately, because of where they were located, a school had to be shut down for 7 days because of this event. But this is really what you're talking about. So what we're doing here is we're really adopting the ordinance that you all are considering is adopting all of the industry requirements to make sure that we incorporate all the safety that is currently out there. And one of the big things that we're doing, I'll go back to that. I think Josh has already told you incident response is a quarter mile evacuate, a half mile in place. And I will say that the International Fire Chief's recommendation is 300 feet. These facilities should be 300 feet from any residential structure. Let me go on. We're requiring NFPA 855 standards. These are the standards that are currently in place and are currently being updated constantly as we're learning more about this. So you all are adopting that standard for your safety. So as that updates, our ordinance will automatically update with those standards. So that is one of your biggest safety, and Matt, would you agree that's our biggest safety part of this for how we will make sure that these are operating? But the biggest safety thing that we're doing is by saying that we are restricting them to the M2 zone rather than M1. And the reason is these are heavy industrial zones in our community. The green is residential, the dark blue is heavy industrial. So as you can see, these are located away from residential areas for the most part. If you remember when we looked at the light blue, this is M1, they are really next to residential zones. So right now, until we know more, we think M2 is the appropriate place, and it will be a conditional use. Mayor, the one that you all are going to, if you approve this, it's not just an automatic in M2, it's a conditional use. Then the Board of Zoning Adjustment will have the opportunity to really look at the locations where these will be put and decide if there are any other additional safety requirements that should be incorporated for this particular location. So those are really the safety issues that we have incorporated. So by doing this, we can make sure that the national standards, the standards for batteries are all going to apply to these industries that are coming into our community. Is that an answer?
It's a perfect answer.
Okay.
So how did can you remind us, how did the planning commission vote go on this? What was the
Planning
decision
Commission,
made?
well, it was one person voted against it and the rest voting for it. And I think it was an 11-1 vote, but I don't have it in front of me. Jennifer?
I believe it was 9.
No, some of our members, but of the members present, all but one voting in favor of this.
Okay, thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions for our city attorney on this particular one?
That clears it up, yeah.
I just got to say, if we took 6 months, would that put a crimp in anything, Brian, when that hurt, that we just slowed it down for 6 months? Because technology is moving fast, and the one thing I was a little concerned with, when the fire chief, when you start talking about evacuations from toxic fumes, that's serious business. And we don't know enough. Does it cause cancer later on in life? If you do smell it and get it inhaled, I just think that, to me, I'm just thinking that maybe in 6 months, because technology is moving, and I really appreciate what you're doing, because you're making us to the point where we're getting back, where we control our own destiny when it comes to electricity. And anything we can do, we should go after, but we have to, on new technologies like this, I just think we have to slow walk it so that we don't hurt somebody in the process.
I can certainly, I would like to speak to your concern about the gases, because we do know that the primary gases that are produced during one of these events, and it is primarily a smoke event, not as much a fire as it is a smoldering chemical reaction. The primary gases are carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, and hydrogen, none of which are toxic. There are trace amounts of toxic fumes or gases due to some of the other components of maybe that's in the battery containers themselves, that kind of thing. But the primary gases are not toxic to people. Certainly understand and respect the required evacuation area. But to your point, we do have an RFP out. We've spent, so far to get to where we're at, we've spent about $100,000 planning for this project. So what my plan is, and I fully expect this to get adopted or passed, I think it's a good thing to have this regulated, and we support that. What our intent's going to be is to have the area zoned heavy industrial where we want this project to go, and I'm optimistic that it will be approved as a conditional use at this location. We're going to be very close on the setback requirement, but I believe that we could.
What was the location again?
Substation number 7 on South Green Street. We have about 4.5 acres there. It's an ideal location because that's where we serve our industrial, our big customers. And I'm going to have conversations with them because I think this is a really attractive resource for them, understanding that they can recognize power cost savings just like everybody else. So what I wanted to point out to you is that we're going to be prepared. If we get the responses we expect Friday, we're going to be prepared to recommend an award to our utility commission to proceed with this project. And I'm optimistic that once we have that partner selected, then I'll have additional help and support to talk to and educate people that have questions just like you do, and from our fire departments and others. So I'm not intending for our current plan to stop with this ordinance. My concern is that we're not going to allow battery storage, and I think longer term, this will be revised. I think if battery storage comes to be more widely adopted, like I think it will, I think light industrial is really going to be, an appropriate zone. But we've got some more work to do. I recognize that. But to your point, 6 months, there'll be a different picture for sure. There'll be a lot more information, and we'll certainly be looking at some different safety measures. And there's options on the table that we have talked about, but it's not part of the plan yet. But there's other mitigation ways to mitigate risk, safety risk.
Brad, I want to make sure that we get a clear answer on Commissioner Pruitt's question.
Yes.
Because I heard a couple of different things from you there, and so I want to make sure I know what you're saying. His question would it set you all back significantly if this were not adopted for 6 months?
Well, I don't know the answer because I don't know if we would be subject to a future ordinance. If there's a moratorium, absolutely. If there's no ordinance and no moratorium, then no. But if there's no ordinance and a moratorium is implemented to prevent any battery storage, then absolutely that stops us in our tracks.
Okay.
As soon as I know that, we'll stop spending money.
Okay.
The reason why, one of the things, the chief, fire chief said that, I don't know, what did he say, out of 7 or 9, there was 5 fires. And that tells me that something is causing that to be unstable like that. I don't want to put something in our community and some people get hurt and we didn't know.
Absolutely.
Later on down the road that it caused somebody's kid to get cancer or something, because I don't think we have the data. And some of those other cities were putting moratoriums on for a reason. And I didn't do all the research, but as many incidents that he was talking about, and it said it was hard to put out. He did say it was hard to put those kind of fires out. So
if you don't mind, I'd like to call Chief Dixon back up.
Yeah.
If you don't mind to come up and join us real quick. So Chief, I have a follow-up question based on Commissioner Pruitt's line of reasoning. This particular ordinance, I know a lot of care was given, and I know the fire department had quite a bit of input on how this particular ordinance was structured as well. So with this particular ordinance, with it being restricted to, is it M1 or M2? M2, thank you. With it being restricted to M2, including the setbacks that are required and the distances from neighbors, basically, in M2 that are not in other zones, is it your opinion that while if an event occurred, we recognize that it would be a tap on your resources?
Absolutely.
But is it your opinion that with this restricted to M2, that we're taking the proper precautions to preserve the health and safety of the community while also moving forward with exploring this new way of producing power in our community?
I would agree to that.
You would agree to that?
Mhm.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Before you leave, Chief, real quick.
Sorry,
I just
yes.
want to say, I know you can't guarantee
No, yeah.
it, but if we did have an incident, are we in danger or not?
There's so many variables out there. In Warwick, to give an example, in Warwick, New York, the event lasted, Dawn, was it 7 days? And I want to say that it was high, the talking about hydrogen cyanide was one of the areas that they were trying to monitor. And they set the monitoring from 500 feet, they didn't get anything, 300 feet, all the way up to 30 feet until they started getting parts per million that could affect somebody. And I don't want to be quoted on this, but I believe that the hazmat response chief said that it takes 4 parts per million to harm somebody or to be fatal. And that was the biggest concern. Now, weather played into a factor on that because clouds were low, not very much wind, so those are things that would be variables we have to take into consideration if an event occurred. And it's hard, we have to play devil's advocate, the what if. We have to prepare if it's a catastrophic failure and not something that's just small, if that makes sense.
If the wind was blowing, in your opinion, if the wind was blowing, we had a catastrophic failure, would it be a problem for our citizens?
Possibly. I can't rule it out.
That's all I want.
That's good. It's a good question. Yeah. It's a difficult one. Does anybody else have any other questions for the fire chief while he's up here? Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. So it looks like the crux of what we need to decide is we have a motion and a second on the table. And before we vote, I just wanted to rehash these few points. So we've got an ordinance that we sent down to Planning Commission that they voted to send back up to us in a pretty resounding yes vote. We have the safety of our citizens that we need to take into consideration and make sure that we are comfortable with the safety of our citizens. If we vote to approve this ordinance, what we are voting on is a mechanism to give HMP&L the opportunity to have a zoning changed so that they can be able to do this. But we are not giving HMP&L the power to do that directly. They would have to go through the BOZA process and have a hearing in front of BOZA, and ultimately it would be up to the Board of Zoning and Adjustments to approve or deny the request to change a zone in any one of the substations, because it's my understanding none of the substations are currently zoned M2. Is that all accurate, Dawn?
Almost.
Okay.
So, Board of Zoning Adjustment, first what would have to happen is council will go through a rezoning process. That rezoning process actually will go to the Planning Commission for a public hearing. Planning Commission will make a recommendation, and then if it's not appealed for 21 days, the recommendation would be M2. Then they would be in the correct zone, and then you're correct. Then it would go, they would make a conditional use permit application to the Board of Zoning Adjustment, and the Board of Zoning Adjustment would look at this area and make recommendation. They would make the decision of what conditions they feel would be necessary to allow it.
If I haven't told you recently how good you are at your job, I'll mention it right now. Thank you. So we do have a motion and a second on the table. Any other questions or discussion from the commission about this before we take a vote?
So this would go to the Board of Zoning Adjustments and not come back to us. Is that correct?
So we would be providing the framework for someone to apply to the Board of
Right.
Zoning and Adjustments, correct?
But first, for Hempel to do it, they would have to go to the planning commission, get rezoned, then
Yeah.
come back to us.
Yeah.
It could.
The
Yeah,
zoning
if it-
part would.
Yeah, it could. Appeal could come back to us, you're right. You're right, so it could, but we're setting up a process from this that would require future and other approvals before this would be allowed. And so we're not expressly allowing it, but we are allowing for the process to take place in the
Right. We're
community.
allowing Hempel to go forward.
Yes, ma'am.
And it wouldn't just be Hempel. I believe that there is at least one Kennergy substation in the city limits on Old Madisonville Road, so if they rezone. I mean, I just don't want to say this is just for Hempel, because it would be open to other
Gotcha.
elected
Within the city
companies. So
limits.
I just wanted to make that one point.
Now, on that, are we required, if we allow Hempel to go forward, are we allowing Energy to go forward
They
too?
would have
or
to
is it
be
separate?
zoned correctly, they would have to go to the Board of Zoning Adjustment.
So they're all separate?
Right, but this is just the ordinance
Right.
that sets up the mechanism.
I was just saying in the future, if this goes forward,
Right.
is each going to be judged individually or?
Board of Zoning Adjustment, yes, and the rezone would if they weren't zone.
Can you tell us the setback requirements?
The setback requirements would be 50, no. I don't have the zoning guru right here, because I haven't looked at it every day. But remember, what would most likely happen is, BOSA would probably set the setbacks as part of their commercial use.
Okay.
I would imagine what Board of Zoning Adjustment would do, we take what the International Fire Chiefs recommend, which is a 300-foot setback from a residential, and make that as part of it. But, okay.
Yeah, so for the front yard, it would be 100 feet, and any side yard that is adjacent to residential, which probably would be very limited, would be 50 feet. That's what we have in our schedule of regulations. But of course, we would recommend probably something more than that to go along with what the International Fire Chief's recommendation was, which was well over that. So, and that's just, again, it's for safety. It's because there's so many unknowns. And that can change.
Yeah, that's all subject to change too, isn't it?
Yes.
And so do we want to, just as a matter of discussion, do we want to have any setbacks put into this ordinance for starters, so that we provide that guidance from the commission level, or do we want to leave that up to BOSA? What would be the most appropriate step?
I think we should leave it in, because it's an ongoing thing, so it could change.
Okay.
Next week, next month, so if we put one in there, we're locked in.
Gotcha.
Or have to come back and redo it,
Any other questions or comments or suggestions?
I just want to commend you, Brian, for, looking, I mean, yeah, and for looking for all kind of ways to keep our electrical rates low. Even though this technology is a little risky, but you're out there doing your job, working for the people of Henderson, so that we can control our own destiny again. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And with that, roll call, please.
Commissioner Whitt?
Aye.
Commissioner Bowles?
Aye.
Commissioner Thomas?
Aye.
Commissioner Pruitt?
No.
Mayor State?
Aye. Thank you all for the discussion. Some things are, not that what we do up here is anything is less important, but some things require some additional discussion. I appreciate you all working through that list. We have some resolutions to read. We have a resolution approving an agreement with the Humane Society of Henderson County.
Resolution number 54-23, resolution approving funding agreement with the Humane Society of Henderson County Incorporated for animal control services from July 2023 through February 2024, and the mayor is authorized to execute agreement on behalf of the city.
We have a motion to approve. So moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
Do we have any questions or comments or suggestions on this particular resolution? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Whitt?
Aye.
Commissioner Bowles?
Aye.
Commissioner Thomas?
Aye.
Commissioner Pruitt?
Aye.
Mayor State?
Aye. Next up, we have a resolution approving First Amendment to gas supply contract.
Resolution number 55-23, resolution approving First Amendment to gas supply contract between the Public Energy Authority of Kentucky, or PEAK, and the City of Henderson, Kentucky, and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract on behalf of the city.
Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Commissioner Thomas was the first. We have any questions, comments, suggestions? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Whitt?
Aye.
Commissioner Bowles?
Aye.
Commissioner Thomas?
Aye.
Commissioner Pruitt?
Aye.
Mayor State?
Aye. Next up, under bids and contracts, we have a municipal order approving sports complex change order.
Municipal order number 53-23, municipal order approving change order proposal requests, PR number 6, number 9, number 16, number 19, number 23, and number 27 to the construction agreement with Art Construction Company Incorporated of Evansville, Indiana for construction of the Henderson Sports Complex on Airline Road in an amount of $1,417,332.50.
Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Buzzy, do you want to mention anything about what we're doing, or do you want to have Dylan mention?
Dylan is the
All right.
project manager, and I prefer he sort of bring y'all up to date.
Dylan, what are we looking at, sir?
And I will pass this out. So every time I've brought something to you all, I've always given you all the overall project budget, just so you can see kind of where we're tracking. And more or less, the main message of this is that we're still tracking about the same net as where we were. You'll notice quite a few additions in that third table. It says other additions. But there were also quite a few credits that were built into the contract that we won't end up using. And so more or less, they end up being a wash. So when you look at this, what's in green is what has previously been approved. And then what's highlighted in orange is what is actually submitted, the PRs that Marie just read. And so, as you'll see, those total about 1.4 and some change. The biggest one of those, the biggest two of those are the ones at the top, which are the addition of the southeast parking lot. And this one, I think, at a previous meeting, maybe 2 meetings ago, we kind of took an informal vote and said we wanted to proceed with that. And then as well as the 2 multi-purpose grass fields. So basically, those two kind of go together. In order to add the 2 extra multi-purpose fields on the eastern side of the property, we needed to have the parking as well. And so that PR9 is just the building of the parking lot and the rock. The paving will actually be done at a later date. So, and you can see that's actually listed below at that 700,000 number. So basically, if you add all those numbers up, you look at all the deducts, we're still tracking at about the same net we were previously. I've talked pretty at length with the city manager and the finance director about these, and we feel pretty comfortable where we stand financially. So that's pretty much where we stand.
Any questions for Dylan while we've got him up here? These are all things that we've discussed at excruciatingly long length throughout the year. And so we're here. And just a reminder, too, is that the funding for the bonds that we're issuing to fund the sports complex were decisions that were made from a commission a couple of terms ago, actually now. And so we have funding in place to pay for the bonding for the project. So we're not talking about having to raise any additional revenue to fund this particular phase of the sports complex, even with the addition. So any other questions, comments, suggestions? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Witt?
Aye.
Commissioner Bowles?
Aye.
Commissioner Thomas?
Aye.
Commissioner Pruitt?
Aye.
Mayor State?
Aye. City managers report.
Dylan, no.
Yeah, I'm saying.
I would ask Dylan to present a subject matter. Yeah.
Hey, Paula, could you introduce her to everybody, let everybody know who she is? This is Paula. You want to come up to the podium real quick? We need to at least let everybody know who you are.
I'd rather run out.
Yeah, before you run out. Maybe everybody don't know. Could you?
Paula Hawkins, New Hope Animal Rescue Center.
So I just want you to come up and let everybody know this is kind of been our plan B. When things go awry with our Humane Society, this is the one that fills the gaps. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks. Nice meeting you.
Thanks, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine. Do you have something else, Buzzy? You're ready for me to take it away?
Well, I'm going to sort of open the conversation for Dylan, but we have been through the sports complex project now for going on 3 years. But early on in this whole conversation is how this sports complex would be operated. And I will tell you, we've had many meetings with different sport organizations amongst our sports complex committee, of which Trace and Brian Bishop is here. He served on it, Mark Simmons, Dylan, myself, and a few others. And we have really struggled to make sure we get this right. So Dylan, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you talk to them about your thoughts.
Yeah, so unexpectedly, about 2 months ago, there was a company called the Sports Facilities Company that reached out to me, and I'm actually quite familiar with this company, or at least I thought I was. I didn't quite fully understand at the time all the services they offered, but I'm sure most of y'all are probably familiar with the mega sports complex in Elizabethtown, Kentucky. Well, a couple years after they opened, or a few years, I don't know how many exactly it was, they hired the Sports Facilities Company to come in and manage their company. So I've known about them for several years. As Buzzy said, we've been down to E-Town. We visited their complex. I've met with their manager there who works for them. I believe they even were in one of the RFPs that when we were trying to select a designer for this project. So they're a company I'm very well familiar with. So anyway, they reached out to us about a month or two ago and wanted to have a sit down. And at first I wasn't, super interested because I thought, I knew that we were going to operate this thing by ourselves at first. And so in talking with them, I realized that they actually offer a lot more than just management services where they come in and take over your complex and basically run it. And so in talking with them, they in the last 3 years, they've had 31 official contracts with Kentucky communities with various services. And when I talked with them, I learned that they actually offer some services called pre-opening services. And these are basically professional services to get your sports complex ready into opening day from an operations standpoint. And so they sent me a proposal, and I'm just going to read a couple of the highlights on some of the services that they can offer. So HR-related functions, finance and cash handling, creating systems and operational procedures, an operations handbook, maintenance procedures, a marketing plan, both local and regional, website development, grand opening planning, a sports facility handbook, sourcing, recruiting, community usage policies, customer service training, establishing hours of operation, establishing user fees and rates, creating reservation procedures, space allocation policies and recommendations, partnerships and sponsorship execution, food and beverage menu, pricing, inventory and reporting, communications and electronic management recommendations, preventative maintenance planning tools, identifying service contracts, marketing plan, local and regional event strategies, advertising, sponsorships, brand development, brochures, templates, press releases, staff training, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of things that they offer. And so basically they shot me a proposal after meeting with them. I was really kind of interested in this concept. And they would essentially come alongside us as almost an extra employee from now until, roughly a month or so after we open, and go through a checklist. They call it a Gantt chart, if y'all are familiar with that. It's basically a to-do list with an assigned schedule to it. And they basically go through that and make sure we have taken into account all the things that we need to know in order to open this complex. And the great thing about it is they wouldn't just give us that and say, here's your checklist. They would work with us to develop those. So, creating a reservation policy, figuring out what is a fair rate, how do other complexes do this? Do they allow nonprofits to use it for free? Do they have just open hours? And so all of that are things that they would help us with, and they could actually provide us templates that we would then take to use as our own. And so in talking with them, their proposal to do that, basically to work with us from now until a month after opening, would be about $80,000. And so as we look at this complex, as Buzzy said, we've spent a lot on building it. And when I heard that $80,000, I thought, that could be a good investment to make sure that we open this thing right in the scheme of things. And so, as I've told Buzzy frequently, when it comes to this sports complex or any project, I'm not really afraid of the things I don't know, because there's always somebody you can work with who knows those things. It's the things you don't know that you don't know. And as I was reading through this list, we had thought about a lot of this stuff, but there was a lot of this stuff we hadn't, and some of it's like, I don't even know where to start. And so I think they could be a valuable partner with us. And I think the cool thing about them is they have a proven track record with, E-Town is one that's, close to us, but they operate, dozens of these things across the country. They worked with, plenty of Kentucky communities in one way or another. And so I think that they've got kind of a niche market. They're filling a niche need. We did some Google searches and called some people and couldn't find anyone else that offered these specific services. And so I think that it's something that could be really valuable. And the other thing that I'll just say, and like I said, it's $80,000. But the good thing is we have about just shy of a $500,000 operating budget in this current budget for the sports complex. As y'all can probably imagine, we're not going to even touch most of that money because the sports complex will likely not open until it won't open until 2024. And so we have enough funds in our operating budget to kind of move stuff around to do that. And if by some chance something happened and we didn't, we would come back to y'all. But I feel pretty confident. I think the city manager feels pretty confident that we can accommodate this in our existing budget. And so with that, ultimately what I'm here today is to just present that to you all, see if y'all are interested. If you are, we would come back at the next meeting with an actual contract for approval. So Buzzy, is there anything you want to add?
Again, I just want to reiterate, we've gone through 3 years, really it's been longer than that, and we have a major expenditure, probably one of the largest we've ever had in recent history, and that we don't want to make a mistake. And if we do make a mistake, it's going to be a black eye on staff, maybe black eye on y'all, but there are things that we just don't know because we've never done it before, and we all know how we operate our youth sports. So I have to be in support of this because, again, as Dylan said, it's what we don't know is what will get us in trouble, and we can't afford that.
Well, like I said, did you say they're gonna design and price the menu?
They would help us with that, yeah. So we would sit down, and another thing I didn't mention is, and one of the things that I think alone is probably worthwhile is, we're still trying to figure out exactly how we're going to do concessions. They're actually going to do some financial forecasting for us that would say, hey, here's what you could expect if you did it in-house. Here's what you could expect if you lease it. Here's what to expect 5 years from now versus now. So all of that, I know you had mentioned the POS system, and I think that is something that we could definitely consult with them and say, hey, what system works best? What technology? How does that look like? What sort of
If you price
protocols?
the menu out correctly and
Yeah.
design the right menu, that's gonna save us 10 to 20,000 a year. I'd say it's well worth 80,000 starting out.
I'll tell you what we'll do instead of like all of us just throwing questions at Dylan, is I'm going to start with Commissioner Thomas. He's looking for an indication of interest. And so with whatever questions you might have and comments you want to make, let's start with you, and then let him know if you're in favor of looking at this on the agenda next time.
I am definitely in favor. Like we said, we're spending too much money, and we need to make this thing right from the get-go and not chase our tails 2 years down the road. We need to make it first class, because for what we're dumping into this thing, it needs to be top-notch. So I'm all in favor of that.
Commissioner Witt?
I would agree with everything Commissioner Thomas said. Also, I think with us being a small community, there's always people that, want to reject their thoughts and opinions of the sports. So to have an independent third party kind of look at it and kind of frame it in that direction, I think perhaps might save us some headaches.
Based on what they've experienced, too.
Correct,
From-
yeah.
Commissioner Pruitt?
I think, we can start saying, hey, this could rent, we should rent it for this, and that, and then we be just going in and being, I think it's a good idea.
Commissioner Bounds?
Yeah, I guess I'm really interested in, you said they do help with fundraising as well.
Yeah.
I'm really interested in how they might help us with that. I think most of our fundraising effort right now is volunteer-based, right? So,
It is.
just to get some professionals who have some experience in that field and have them help our volunteers that are working on it now. I think it'd be very beneficial for our volunteers involved, and could be really beneficial for the whole complex in general.
It could be a game changer, and to add to that, I'd be interested in their thoughts on how we can build and sustain continuing revenue on a yearly basis as well, to offset whatever costs we might incur. So I'm in favor of looking at it too. So yeah, please do have it added to the agenda for our consideration. It'd be great.
Sir.
Like Rodney said, we spend way too much money to have a rollout that's not right.
Yeah.
We want it to be right.
One last thing, if you bring this to our next meeting, I would also ask that you do a project update with an aerial overview of the project.
Will do.
Good deal. Thank you, Dylan.
Thank you.
Buzzy, I think you have one other item on your city manager's report.
Yes, I just want to make you all aware, the planning commission denied a rezoning request with graphic development for Wesley Drive property. And as I normally notify y'all, that there's a 21-day period in which persons who would want to appeal that decision can file that with the city and come back before this board. Just let you know that. Other than that, that's all I have.
Do we have anything on the city attorney today? You've been kind of starring in the last half of this meeting. You good? All right, so commissioners' reports. Commissioner Witt.
The only thing I would say is that, we talked earlier on about the property tax reassessment moratorium in terms of how it relates to downtown. And I think part of the intercity improvement plan, the economic arm of that, presented the idea of perhaps trying to expand that into East Inner City I'd like sometime in the future if we could explore possibly looking into something like that.
I think that's actually a great idea, and if there's something we can do before that December meeting to possibly get something for our consideration on that agenda. Let me ask you, Commissioner Wood, while you bring that up, as we extend that tax, so the tax moratorium that he's speaking of, in case anyone is wondering, is pretty much any building that's over 25, is it 25 years, Dawn? Yeah, 25 years old. If somebody takes that building and rehabilitates it for certain purposes, then there's a 5-year tax moratorium on the improvements. So they would continue to pay a certain tax rate on the building that they bought or acquired or have that they pay now, do these improvements, but they won't have to pay taxes on the improved assessed value for 5 years. And that's something we've had in place downtown for a long time. In the inner city plan, just like you had mentioned, the Economic Development Committee recommended expanding that into the inner city. The question I've got is, I like the premise and I don't mind to expand it. Do you think we should only expand it into the inner city, or do you think we should expand it farther than that?
Okay, so section 21-91, the tax moratorium currently is allowed in general business, highway, commercial, residential office, neighborhood business, riverfront RF2, which is the commercial part of the riverfront, Audubon Commercial District, Gateway Zone District, and Henderson Innovative Planning District. Yeah. So it's already in for the Audubon Commercial District.
But it's only the commercial district.
Right. We have, it's only on the commercial.
And I think that the economic development recommended that we look at trying to expand
For residential?
Not for residential, but for commercial businesses that are in the residential areas.
Oh, okay.
And I'll tell you what we could do is maybe if we shoot for the next meeting to have just a brief ordinance review, where you talk about some of the thoughts you have about any changes we can make to improve it, and then we'll let you know, and then put that on the December 12th agenda. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, and, I don't know how much from a financial standpoint that matters, so.
Well, honestly, we're not losing any current money.
Sure. No,
And so in my mind, we're investing in people who want to invest in our community. And while we may not make the money from their investment right away, we're not losing any money by giving them that opportunity. And so I don't mind the idea of expanding it. And if that spurs more growth and development, that's great.
Kind of rewarding them for taking a chance.
Yeah.
I wanted to apologize, Commissioner Thomas, that I overspoke on the Economic Development Committee. That was your committee.
You were the smartest woman in the room.
Hey, Nick, what do you think if we go ahead on and include residential? Because if we working on East End and say sickness, we're not losing any money. Somebody adds on a couple rooms, and we're not the value for 5 years. They invested in their home, they're staying here, and then after 5 years, we pick that income up anyway.
It has to be over what? It has to be over $25,000 improvement?
Well, so why don't we look at that? But I think there's all kinds of issues introducing residential. And with residential, if you have an existing home that you make an improvement on, most oftentimes those are not noted in your assessed values anyway until you sell the property. But we can certainly look at the legalities of it and see if that.
I'm just saying, you got people, they want to invest in their home.
Yeah.
And they want to.
I don't think it hurts.
Yeah. So it sounds like we're headed for a discussion. We've got to get out of here because we're at a 5 o'clock meeting after this. But it sounds like we're heading for a discussion at our next meeting, at least to take a look at the premise of it and see how we want to move forward. Commissioner Bowles.
I don't have anything. Well, we were going to try to have a city-county co-op meeting today, but we didn't get that scheduled. I think we're looking at December 12th for a meeting likely. So if anybody has anything they'd like the city and the county to look at together, let it, myself or the mayor know, and try to get on that agenda.
Good deal. Commissioner Thomas.
I want to congratulate Commissioner Witt.
Oh, yeah, you did just have an election. Yeah, congratulations. He was sworn in right before the meeting today, so he's officially back on until, and this time it's through the end of the next year's calendar year.
There you go.
Yeah, congratulations. Commissioner Pruitt.
Rodney just beat me to it. Congratulations. Congratulations, Nick.
Thank you. Two quick things for me. One is Commissioner Witt made a motion last time that we approved to give the Salvation Army $2,500 toward their Thanksgiving lunch this year. And we all agreed that we would go and try to do some volunteering. I touched base with Major Story, and he said that from 11 to 1 that day is the actual service volunteering, where we actually serve the food. Then there's prep work in the morning and tear down in the afternoon. And so I went ahead and told him to expect us to be there for whatever we could make it to for the serving portion of it from 11 to 1. So I just want to let you know the timing on that. He said just come to the main building, we should be okay. And then on December the 12th, in December, we're going to try to knock out everything in one meeting because the next meeting would be the 26th, which is the day after Christmas. So we can expect kind of a lengthy meeting. We're also scheduling a work session for the same day. Right now, the work session is going to include the results from the Intercity Improvement Plan. So the scoring system, and then we can go over that with the committee members who would like to show up and be present for that. Talk about how we're going to attack the implementation of those, any changes we need to make to next year's plan. And also, if I haven't discussed this with you, but if we want to discuss that day or put on that work session, our thoughts on how we want to move forward, if we want to move forward with the addition of the assistant city manager position in light of Buzzy's retirement on down the road a little farther than it was previously. So we can at least see how that's going to take shape too. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, aye? Aye.